If you clicked on this video, I suspect you're thinking of buying a house in Scotland and you're confused by offers over. What does it mean? How does it work? And most importantly, how much over should you offer? Buckle up, let's get into it. If you're an existing subscriber, welcome back, guys. If you're new here, my name's Ian. I'm a 50-year-old bloke and I moved 600 miles from everybody I know down in the south of England to live here in the remote countryside of Aberdeenshire. And North and Forth is my channel. One of the biggest questions that came out of my two buying in Scotland videos, one was the truth about moving to Scotland from England, and the other was a deep dive into buying a house in Scotland. The biggest question without fail was about the offers over system, and most importantly, how much over to offer. In this video, we're going to go through what offers over actually means, why sellers use it, the theory behind the process and how it should work, and I'm going to give you some tips about how to present your offer and yourself as a buyer. And finally, stick around for the last one, which is the big question: how much over should I be offering? Number one, what offers over actually means. This is probably the most simplest question in this process to answer. The seller is inviting you to offer over the price that is advertised. So if it's offers over 100,000, they're looking for offers over 100,000. This is very common here in Scotland. You will see other prices like fixed price or offers in the region of, but typically offers over is very common here. So don't be surprised to see it. It is rooted in the Scottish sealed bid system. So very similar. If you're coming from England, sealed bids means exactly what it says. You put in a sealed bid for the property and the seller chooses who they're going to go with. And that's where the idea is rooted. So very simply, offers over the figure that's advertised. We'll come back to how much over later in the video, so stick around. Number two, why do sellers use offers over? Very simply, as a seller of a property, you want to get the best price for your property. So pricing the property at potentially an artificially low point and asking for offers over creates competition. Buyers don't know what other buyers are offering, and that in turn leads to the best price being achieved. Is this good for you as a buyer? No. Is it good for the seller? Very much so. Number three, how the process actually works, or more importantly, how the process should work. This is where things start to become a little grey. In theory, the offers over system is that you are asking for offers over, say, £100,000, and you as a buyer will go along, look at the property, decide that you're interested in it, and you would instruct your solicitor to put a note of interest or an offer on the property. If you put an offer, that's an offer. If you put a note of interest, it means that the seller's solicitor will come back to you should they get other offers, notes of interest, or they decide with the seller to set a closing date. So let's imagine you've put a note of interest on the property has other notes of interest and or other offers. The seller and their selling agent, solicitor, may decide that they're going to set a closing date. Now, the closing date will usually be midday on Friday, the 2nd of September, or whatever the date may be. The seller's solicitor will then communicate to all interested parties, notes of interest, offers, that a closing date has been set, and your effectively best and final offer should be submitted by midday on that set date. That is in theory how the system works. The seller, along with their selling agent or solicitor, will then look at all of the offers that they've had and choose potentially a buyer from those offers. A few points to note about this part of the process. The seller is not bound to accept any of the offers, in fact. So if none of them meet their expectations, or none of the buyers are in a position that they can move forward immediately, they don't have to accept those offers. It won't necessarily be the highest bid that wins. You could be the highest bid by tens of thousands of pounds, but if you're not in as good a position as potentially another buyer who's offered less, the seller could choose to go with that buyer. So they don't necessarily have to commit to the highest bid. The other thing to say, just before we move on to the next part of the process, is I've described textbook how the process should work. The reality of the world is that it doesn't always work like that. Sometimes you don't get enough interest to set a closing date. Sometimes you don't get offers over, which again, I'll come back to in my last point about how much over you should offer. Okay, so we're now into the confusing part of the system. How to approach this as a buyer and how to present yourself as the best buyer you can. First up, find out your affordability. Go to a mortgage broker, get an agreement in principle with a lender, and make sure you know exactly what your budget is and how far you can bid before you start. If you don't have an agreement in principle already, go and get one, either direct from a lender or from a broker preferably, and make sure you've got that so that you can show it to any agent that you're in the bidding process with. Do your own research about for sale prices and sold prices in the area of the house that you're looking to bid on. There's never been more information out there in terms of Rightmove. Here in the northeast of Scotland, there are various solicitor websites that have properties on. You've got sold prices on Rightmove and Zoopla, etc. You've got the EPC register, so you can compare the house you're looking at with other houses in the road for their size, because the size is on the EPC. So make sure you've done your homework about the area, the property, and how it compares to others. Don't get emotionally attached to a property. I know this is easier said than done. I get it. You go to view a property, and property is one of the few things in life we buy with our heart and not our head. Maybe if you're a bloke, you might do that with cars. But in general, if you're buying a washing machine or a TV, you don't really get emotionally attached to it like a home. And I think this goes back to caveman days where, you know, your cave, your home was your protection from the outside world. And we still feel that. So try not to get emotionally attached. I know it's easier said than done, but try not to do that. Buyers who are emotionally attached to a property are very much easier to negotiate with or push to a higher price because they're emotionally attached. Why does it confuse buyers? Well, put simply, the price that it's advertised at may not be the price it ends up going for. So it's on for £100,000. You've got a budget of 110. You put your bid in and it ends up going for 130, which you couldn't ever get to. So it's not terribly transparent from a buyer's point of view. If you do get emotionally attached, you can very quickly go past your original set boundaries on price. So for instance, you see a house you love, it needs what you think is £50,000 worth of work done to it, and you end up bidding your 50,000 work budget into the purchase price because you don't want to lose the house. You then move in, realise you don't have the money to finish the property or finish it to the standard you hoped, and then you end up with buyer's remorse. So it is a very confusing situation to be in as a buyer. Which brings us neatly on to my last point, which is the one you're probably all wanting to know. How much over should I offer? And here's where it gets really grey. There is no hard and fast rule on how much over you should offer. I see on Facebook groups all the time, people in moving to Scotland, Facebook groups saying, how much over should I offer? And they get all sorts of answers from people on Facebook. Some of them are sensible, but some of them are, it's 10%, it's 20%. Let me tell you now, there is no hard and fast rule about how much over you should offer. It will depend on a number of the following issues or questions. Where in Scotland is the property? Because different parts of Scotland, it's a big country, have different markets. Here in Aberdeenshire, it is quite unusual for a property to go above the home report value. However, down in Edinburgh, in the capital, it is absolutely regular for things to go way above the offers over figure and above the home report value. So depending on where you're buying in Scotland will depend on how much over, under, around to offer on a property. There are other reasons and questions you should be answering. How long has the property been on the market? If the property has just come to the market and they have 4 notes of interest and 2 offers already, well, you can pretty much say that's going to go above offers over and possibly a good deal above offers over. If it's been on the market a year, they've got no other interest, no notes of interest, no offers, there's a good chance you'll buy it for below the offers over figure. I did. My house was on the market for offers over 175,000 and I didn't pay that. I paid below that amount for it. So you need to be judging how long a property has been on the market and how much interest there is before you start to make your offer. And of course, where in the country it is. If you want me to do a deep dive into the questions you should be asking a seller when you're looking at a property to help you understand where you should be offering, other levels of interest, and perhaps what works a property might need, let me know and I'll do a deep dive video into what questions to ask. So to summarise, where in the country is it? How much interest has it got? How long has it been on the market? There is no hard and fast rule. It could be 10, 20, 30% in Edinburgh. It could be 5 or 10% less in Aberdeenshire. And other parts of the country could be different again. There's one tip I can leave you with here, and it's easier said than done, is set your budget and give it your best shot. And by that, I mean, if you give it your best shot, make your best offer, and the sellers come back to you and say, I'm sorry, you didn't get the house, you can shrug your shoulders and go, well, I wouldn't have gone any higher anyway. If a seller comes back to you and says, I didn't get the house, and you could have gone 5 or 10 grand more, and you have regret that you didn't give it your best shot. So always be pragmatic about it. If I get it, great. If I don't, I wouldn't have paid any more. That's the brief explainer about the offers over system here in Scotland. I hope you found it useful. If you've got a question, drop it below. Happy to try and answer it within the limits of how much you can type in a YouTube comment. Equally, if you've got a question that can't be answered in the comments, or you want to know more and buy a short amount of my time to understand anything about the house buying process in Scotland, how it worked for me, how I found living here, what have the challenges been, I do have Calendly. I'm happy to book 15-minute, half an hour calls if you want to plug into my knowledge on buying in Scotland and living in Scotland. I put now on the channel, up here somewhere, you will see the Truth About Living in Scotland video and the deep dive into buying in Scotland. Click on either of these if you want more information about buying in this lovely country. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.